The morning air was bitter cold as Jessica sat at the bus stop, pulling her thin coat tighter around her shoulders. At 26, she had learned that Rock Bottom had a basement, and she was currently exploring its depths. 3 weeks ago, she had lost her job at the marketing firm due to budget cuts. 2 weeks ago, her landlord had changed the locks. 1 week ago, her last $20 had bought her final meal. She watched her breath form small clouds in the frigid air, trying to ignore the gnawing hunger in her stomach. The bench was cold and unforgiving, but it was better than walking the streets. She had been sleeping in the women's shelter when beds were available, but today she had nowhere to go until evening. The sound of small footsteps crunching through the snow caught her attention. A little girl, perhaps 4 years old, approached the bus stop wearing a bright pink winter coat and a gray knit hat with a fluffy pom-pom. Her cheeks were rosy from the cold, and her dark eyes sparkled with the kind of curiosity that only children possess. Behind her, at a respectful distance, stood a man in his early 30s. He was dressed professionally in a dark coat, and Jessica could see him checking his phone while keeping a watchful eye on the child. Something about his posture suggested he was used to being in control, but his attention to the little girl revealed a gentler side. The child stopped directly in front of Jessica, studying her with the unguarded directness that adults often found uncomfortable, but Jessica found refreshing. "Hi," the little girl said simply. "I'm Mia." "Hello, Mia. I'm Jessica." Despite her circumstances, Jessica found herself smiling. There was something infectious about the child's openness. Mia tilted her head, considering Jessica carefully. "Are you waiting for the bus, too?" "I am," Jessica replied, though she had no money for fare and nowhere to go. "Where are you going?" Mia asked, settling onto the bench beside Jessica as if they were old friends. Jessica hesitated. How do you explain homelessness to a 4-year-old? "I'm not quite sure yet." Mia seemed to accept this answer without question. She reached into her small backpack and pulled out a granola bar. "Are you hungry? Daddy always packs extra snacks, but I'm not very hungry this morning." The gesture was so innocent and generous that Jessica felt her throat tighten with emotion. "That's very kind of you, Mia, but I couldn't take your snack. Daddy says sharing makes food taste better." Mia held out the granola bar with an expectant smile. "Please?" Jessica glanced toward the man who was now approaching them. His expression was cautious, but not unkind. She could see him trying to assess the situation while respecting his daughter's natural friendliness. "It's all right," he said as he reached them. "I'm Daniel, Mia's father. She's right about the extra snacks." Jessica looked between the father and daughter, seeing the same warmth in both their eyes. "I'm Jessica. Thank you both, but really I'm fine." Mia studied Jessica's face with the perceptiveness that children sometimes display. "You look sad and cold." "Mia," Daniel said gently, "remember what we talked about being polite?" But Mia wasn't finished. She scooted closer to Jessica on the bench, her small hand reaching out to touch Jessica's arm. "My mommy went to heaven last year. Daddy says she's watching over us, but sometimes I get lonely for a mommy." Daniel's expression grew soft and pained. "Mia, sweetheart." The little girl looked up at Jessica with eyes that held both innocence and a wisdom beyond her years. In a voice barely above a whisper, she asked, "Can you be my mommy?" The question hung in the cold air like a prayer. Jessica felt tears spring to her eyes, and she saw Daniel's composure falter as well. The simple longing in those words touched something deep in both adults. "Oh, honey," Jessica said softly, kneeling down to Mia's eye level despite the cold pavement. "What a special question. You know what? I think your daddy takes very good care of you, and your mommy in heaven loves you very much." Mia nodded solemnly. "But she can't make me breakfast or read me stories anymore." Jessica glanced up at Daniel, who was watching the interaction with a mixture of protectiveness and something else she couldn't quite identify. "I bet your daddy is learning to do those things for you." "He is," Mia agreed. "But he's not very good at braiding hair, and sometimes he burns the pancakes." Despite the emotional weight of the moment, Jessica found herself laughing softly. "Well, daddies are still learning sometimes." Daniel cleared his throat gently. "Mia, we should probably let Jessica wait for her bus in peace." But Mia wasn't, ready to end the conversation. "Jessica, do you have a little girl?" "No, I don't have any children." "Do you have a daddy or mommy?" Jessica's smile became more fragile. "No, I don't have family nearby." Mia processed this information with the seriousness of a much older person. Then, with the decision-making speed that only children possess, she announced, "Then you can be part of our family." Daniel looked as surprised as Jessica felt. "Mia, it's not quite that simple." "Why not?" Mia asked with perfect 4-year-old logic. "Jessica is nice, and she's all alone, and we're alone too sometimes. Families help each other, right?" Jessica felt overwhelmed by the child's generous heart. "Mia, you are the sweetest little girl I've ever met. But families are more complicated than that." "Are you cold?" Mia asked, apparently unbothered by adult explanations of complexity. "A little," Jessica admitted. Without hesitation, Mia began unwrapping her scarf. "Here. Daddy says we should help people who are cold." Daniel stepped forward, his business instincts warring with his father's heart. "Mia, why don't we all go get some hot chocolate? It's too cold to wait for the bus out here." Jessica started to protest, but Mia clapped her hands together. "Yes! Jessica, you have to come. I want to show you how I can drink hot chocolate without getting a mustache." "I really couldn't impose," Jessica began, but Daniel interrupted gently. "Please. It would mean a lot to Mia, and honestly, it would mean a lot to me, too. It's been a long time since I've seen her this excited about meeting someone new." As they walked to the nearby cafe, Mia chattered happily between them, holding both their hands. Jessica learned that Daniel owned a small but successful consulting firm, and that he and Mia had been navigating life alone since his wife Emma had passed away from cancer the previous year. Over steaming mugs of hot chocolate, Jessica found herself opening up about her recent struggles. She told them about losing her job, her apartment, and her growing sense of invisibility as she tried to navigate the social services system. "I used to work in marketing," she explained. "I thought I was pretty good at it, but apparently not good enough to survive budget cuts." Daniel listened thoughtfully. "What kind of marketing?" "Digital campaigns, social media strategy, brand development. I loved the creative problem-solving aspect of it." "Daddy," Mia interjected, "remember how you said you needed help with the computer stuff for your business?" Daniel paused, his mind clearly working. "Actually, I've been struggling with developing an online presence for my firm. I'm much better with face-to-face client relationships than digital marketing." Jessica felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. "I'd be happy to take a look at what you have so far. No obligation, just a consultation." "Can Jessica come to our house?" Mia asked, as if the matter was already settled. Daniel looked at his daughter, then at Jessica. "Would you be interested in a freelance project? I can't offer full-time employment immediately, but I could pay consulting rates for developing a digital marketing strategy." Jessica felt tears threatening again. "Daniel, you don't have to create work for me." "I'm not," he said seriously. "I genuinely need help with this, and I've been putting it off because I don't know where to start. Mia might be young, but she has good instincts about people." 3 months later, Jessica sat in her small but comfortable apartment, reviewing analytics for Daniel's consulting firm. The digital marketing campaign she had developed had exceeded all their projections, bringing in several new corporate clients and establishing Daniel's firm as a leader in their field. More importantly, she had become a regular presence in Mia and Daniel's life, not as a replacement for Mia's mother, but as someone who cared about them both. She helped with hair braiding and pancake making, and in return, they had given her something she hadn't realized she'd lost: a sense of belonging. That evening, as she tucked Mia into bed at Daniel's house where she often stayed for dinner, the little girl looked up at her with serious eyes. "Jessica, do you remember when I asked if you could be my mommy?" "I do remember, sweetheart." "I think maybe you're something even better." "What's that?" Mia smiled sleepily. "You're my Jessica, and that's perfect just the way it is." As Jessica turned off the light and made her way downstairs where Daniel was waiting with tea and plans for the next day's work, she reflected on how a simple question from a lonely child had changed everything. Sometimes families aren't born, they're chosen. And sometimes the most profound connections begin with a 4-year-old's fearless heart asking exactly the right question at exactly the right moment.